This is the Summerboard SBX, an electric road snowboard. What? And we're going to be seeing whether it's possible to commute to work on it. We'll be going straight through the city, carving, spinning and drifting to answer the crazy question, can you actually snowboard to work now? Now obviously this isn't actual snowboarding, but it's the closest thing that you can get to snowboarding on dry roads. And so for those of you here to see actual snowboarding to work, I'm afraid this isn't it, but I guarantee that if you stick around you are going to be blown away by how advanced the technology of these kinds of skateboards is. I'll show you how the Summerboard differs from other electric skateboards or longboards, the kind of crazy frictionless tricks that you can do on them, and I'll be narrating my first few commutes to work on this incredible skateboard. And don't worry, there are going to be fails. Yo, welcome back to the EasyRiders channel where we cover everything you need to know to start snowboarding the streets. Now it has been about a week since we started using the Summerboard SBX, which is an electric skateboard with two powered spinning cast wheels at the bottom of the deck. They have the same six-wheel design as freeboards, which were the first kind of skateboard to emulate snowboarding on completely dry roads. The idea is very simple. The two spinning center wheels are slightly closer to the ground than the four edge wheels. This creates a rocking sensation between two edges, and since the wheels at the bottom spin, you end up with the same flat spinning base that you would get on a snowboard. You reproduce your toe side and heel side edges, and honestly, these kinds of skateboards are incredibly fun to ride. Since receiving the board from Summerboard last week, I have been riding it as much as possible. We've had to rotate the wheels multiple times, and with all of this practice, I thought I'd try to commute to work with it, because unlike other e-skates, Summerboards allow you to move completely freely above the ground. You can spin, drift, and carve, and so in principle, you could turn a boring commute to work into a time where you're practicing snowboarding. Whether that's riding in switch, doing overslide shifties and 360 spins, it is quite crazy that this kind of skateboard even exists. But you know, it's all well and good that it rides incredibly well on a smooth car park, but how does it cope when facing the broad variety of roads that you'd find in a city? Well, let's do a commute to work with it to find out. And so we left the residential area, doing some spins and making sure to look out for traffic every time we reached a crossing. The first part of the journey was a nice long smooth cycle lane, which to get into you go down a nice narrow path, and I tried to do a 360 down it. And once we got onto the smooth cycle path, I thought I'd go over what it's actually like to commute on the Summerboard. Okay, so now I can kind of talk. You're going to want to be good at looking both ways. So, you know, look behind you, look in front. Especially if you want to start doing stuff like rotations and, you know, shifties. You want to know that there's no one in front or coming behind. As we've discussed in some of the previous freeboarding videos, being able to adjust your line of sight while not affecting your weight on either edge is a very useful skill in both freeboard and summerboarding. Because normally when you change your line of sight, you'll probably shift your center of mass a bit, which can absolutely put you off and cause you to catch an edge. So getting used to being able to look side to side or in front or behind of you for cars or bikes is going to be very useful if you want to try and commute on this board. I've done this throughout every single day I've commuted on this board, and it's probably one of the most important skills to have if you want to start doing this. Having such long periods of time to ride on the SBX got me thinking as to what the particular skills involved with freeboarding and summerboarding are, and one of the biggest ones has got to be riding in switch. You know, you're going to want to do all of these things, shifties, spins, 180s, all in switch, all in regular. So now we're back into regular, pick up some speed. And it goes fast, this thing. It really does feel like with the Summerboard SBX or just freeboarding in general, there is such a wide variety of ways to ride it. You can definitely learn to feather and bomb and go as fast as possible, or you can try and focus on the flow of your ride, doing spins, shifties, overslides, and drifting in and out of switch. As for commuting, you've got a lot of control. I think when you first get on this board, same as a freeboard, exactly the same. It's going to feel really, really like terrible. It's just the way it is. I can only just say if you're starting out, don't be disheartened because it gets so much better. Whether we're talking about freeboarding or summerboarding, I try to mention this as often as possible. And that is that for these specific kinds of skateboard, the learning process at the start is very unforgiving. But once you do know the basics, you have a lot more control than you would have initially thought, given how it feels at the beginning. It is actually a lot more similar to a bike in terms of control than any other kind of skateboard. We were reaching the end of the cycle path and it was time to hit some roads. And the first obstacle would be this bin van. I'm not sure if I can overtake this. I overtook, but maybe he's going to want to overtake again. I don't know. I think at this point it's definitely helped that I had a lot of practice with the freeboard at the skate park before ever summerboarding. Being able to hop on and off pavements is very useful if there's a moment that you want to be off the road. You'll also want to be able to jump over small obstacles, so learning to jump is definitely a big one to learn if you want to be commuting. I'm by no means saying to go out and use your summerboard for freestyle, because I don't think I would have done that if I'd bought the board myself, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to be able to jump on and off pavements while commuting. This, coupled with an ability to look side to side, makes the Summerboard incredibly versatile for riding around town. And given the fact that I still haven't encountered a single issue that I had last time with the V1 Summerboard, it feels a lot easier to recommend it if you can afford it. Of course, the Summerboard SBX is very expensive, but if you can afford it and you're looking to practice snowboarding on flat, dry roads, it's pretty much the only game in town as far as I'm aware. With that said, we were getting to the busiest part of the journey. Yeah, so you just got to be very aware of what's around you. It's definitely, like, the amount of control you have is unbelievable. I will say that. I mean, like, I could weave in between cars and stuff if I wanted to. So we need to go that way. The difficult part of the journey was just about to start once the traffic lights would turn green. These were some very busy roads with a lot of cars, and so the main goal is to try and keep a level head, even though a lot of people will be trying to overtake you. Here, okay, this is good. I'll get back onto the bike point in a sec, but look how narrow this is. The skill will be to try and do a little 360 in between. It's stuff like that, really. There is a huge variety of road quality by where I live, and I would say it is so much more fun when the road is smooth than when it's rough. When it's smooth, you can really put your skills to the test and try and pick up speed or do any of the kind of summerboard or freeboard tricks, whereas when it's rough, your main focus is to get to the end of the road. This part of the journey wasn't particularly enjoyable, if I'm being honest, because there was a lot of cars and the ground felt very uneven and bumpy. And so one takeaway from this would be to try and map out your journey beforehand to take place on as many cycle lanes as possible. And as you can see, as soon as we were back onto the cycle lane, it became a lot more fun again. It's going to be like probably cycling through your town the first time you ever cycled. So you're going to be... oh, cheers. Cheers. I mean, that's too satisfying, honestly. To finish the point that I was about to make before going in for the overslide, which was probably the most satisfying part of the run, is that I can imagine trying to commute on the Summerboard once you know how to ride it will be a lot like riding a bike into town before you'd ever ridden on roads. There's always going to be a fear that you're going to crash into a car, but you just have to get used to it. I think if you're a decent enough rider, it shouldn't be too dangerous, as long as you take all of the precautions. You really do have a ridiculous amount of control with freeboards and Summerboards, and so as long as the ground is dry, it becomes quite a viable way to commute. At this point, we were so close to having arrived, we just had to go up one last hill. I have to say, it is pretty crazy to have the sensations of freeboarding while going uphill in the city. I mean, it's just not something I ever would have expected to do while adventuring through the city on my freeboard. Because the fact is, the freeboard is optimized for downhill, and although we did see in Switzerland someone using the Summerboard for actual downhill, after a week of absolutely shredding the Summerboard, I don't think there would ever be a case in which I would prefer to use the Summerboard for downhill over the freeboard. However, when it comes to flat and uphill, it's an equally easy argument to make in support of the Summerboard. The freeboard just cannot be used for flat terrains, and it absolutely can't be used for uphill terrain. This is why it's really not about freeboard or Summerboard, it's about freeboard and Summerboard, because anyone who likes either one of these sports will almost certainly like the other one, because they're nearly the same thing. They're just designed for different kinds of terrains. This last hill is actually incredibly steep, so the fact that the Summerboard even made it to the top is quite astonishing. At this point, we'd made it to work in a similar amount of time as it normally takes me to cycle, and I had a lot more fun doing it. Yeah, and we're basically at work at this point, so, so you know, you've snowboarded to work. I mean, that's actually crazy. I've had a lot of fun in the last week using the Summerboard, and whether you're completely new to Summerboard and freeboard, or you do one of these sports already, I think we can all agree that it is quite crazy that you can practice your snowboarding skills on your daily commute to work through a city. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, the Summerboard SBX definitely isn't cheap, and to buy the equipment that I use in the video costs around $2,049. Whether or not that's worth it for anyone watching really depends on your financial situation. But to be honest, I do think it's just good news, because if you can't afford the Summerboard, you can always buy secondhand freeboards, which although aren't electric, will teach you the exact same skills that you need to ride the Summerboard. They can go for as cheap as $150 secondhand, or you can buy them new from Freeboard. These two options should open up road snowboarding basically no matter what your financial background is. But if you can afford the Summerboard and this is something that you are interested in doing, insofar as I've tested it this week, I haven't had any of the issues that I had last year. And ever since seeing Stella ride the Summerboard, I keep finding that all of the things I thought about the Summerboard were actually quite wrong. You can definitely spin around in a similarly nimble way to the Freeboard. It's definitely not quite the same because it's heavier, but it is nowhere near as restrictive as I thought it was last year, and I was just straight up wrong about that. And this is why now is the best time to start either of these sports, because one, secondhand freeboarding is incredibly cheap, so it's accessible to everyone. The community is absolutely blowing up at the moment, and on the side of Summerboard, they've got a version of the SBX which doesn't seem to have any of the issues which the older versions did. Another question that I can probably hear some of you asking is how long would it take you to learn to Summerboard like I did in this video? Now, if you're just looking to commute from A to B in a city and you've never freeboarded or snowboarded before, then I think a fair estimate might be around 6 to 8 months. I don't think that knowing to skateboard would help very much, if I'm being honest, but if you know how to snowboard, you can probably reduce this time frame a fair bit. Another point which I thought would be quite important to mention is the wheels. Now, I've been riding the Summerboard a lot in the last week, averaging over 20 miles a day or 2 batteries, and obviously that's because I've enjoyed it so much, but that has meant that I've nearly used up a full set of wheels. This shouldn't come as a surprise because, like I said, it really does feel like the Summerboard is bringing downhill freeboarding to my local spots, especially these cycle paths that are very long and very smooth. I'm in no way surprised that with all of the mileage that I'm getting out of the board, the wheels will wear down quickly. It's exactly the same as if you go on a freeboard trip, where it's not uncommon to burn through a whole set of wheels in a few days. If you're starting out with the Summerboard, these wheels will last you a lot longer than they lasted me, but it is a point worth mentioning that if you do ride this board a lot, you will have to replace the wheels, just like on a freeboard. I would really like to test the doubloons on the Summerboard, which are the gold standard for downhill freeboard wheels, and it's absolutely possible that these wheels would give you more mileage. So as you can see, the wheels are starting to wear thin on both sides. Now obviously you can rotate the wheels by flipping them like this and swapping them diagonally, but eventually the urethane does run out. I think I'm about 60% through the wheels, and I have been riding the Summerboard a lot, so I hope that makes it clear as to how much it would actually cost to maintain a Summerboard if you're using it regularly. Overall, testing the Summerboard V2 has been a lot of fun. Sadly, there have been some remarks about, joining the dark side or selling out. Now, I really don't think that that's a positive mentality to have with regards to freeboarding or Summerboard, because the fact is, Summerboard have improved the product with the V2. To be honest, if I'd reviewed it badly, despite the fact that it was actually really good, I think I would have been selling out effectively to freeboard if I weren't reviewing the Summerboard honestly. Just to be completely upfront, I did get this board for free because I'm sponsored by Summerboard. I don't make any money from these videos, it's just the board. That doesn't, however, mean that the videos won't be honest. I will still point out any flaws that I find with the Summerboard as I find them, and I think especially any of you on the freeboard side who are closed-minded to Summerboard, perhaps because of the cost, which is well justified, would benefit a lot from at least having a bit more of an open mind to it, because to be honest, the board is absolutely awesome. And I'm really not just saying that, I've been riding it so much because it's been so fun. If you have a V2 and some honest criticism, I would love to hear it, because it's great to open the discussion, because look, the evidence shows that Summerboard will improve the problem. So the more we speak about the problems with the board, the better the next generation will be, which is, to be honest, what we all want at the end of the day. Not to be married to one brand or the other. Both brands are great, and if you enjoy this kind of hobby, supporting either of them is the best way to go. So I hope this helps answer the question as to whether or not you can commute to work on the SBX. I'm definitely going to keep commuting on it as long as it's dry, because although it's incredibly challenging to go on to work on it at the moment, it does make the journey so much more interesting, and it's incredibly rewarding to arrive at work having already Summerboarded 20 to 30 minutes. Next week we'll be looking at all of the aspects of the Summerboard that I've discovered in the last week of riding it, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. Otherwise, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, but I hope you enjoyed the video and have a good one.